Billionaire, known for his cold tests and ruthless business decisions, leaves a $5 tip for a struggling waitress who has been silently carrying her family on her shoulders. What he expects is irritation, greed, or bitterness. What he receives instead is a quiet sentence that stops him mid-step, a sentence powerful enough to rewrite his entire will and change countless lives. Before their story unfolds, before the moment that reveals who truly holds wealth of the heart, let the narrator's voice settle. Where are you watching from today? And before the secrets of quiet dignity and hidden wounds unravel, please subscribe, because stories like this honor the silent heroes who walk among us. He had done this 100 times, left small tips on large bills, watched reactions like a scientist studying human nature. But this time, something felt different. Elias Harwood, one of the most feared and admired billionaires on the East Coast, stood from his seat at a quiet, amber-lit restaurant just past closing. He slid the small, folded bills under his untouched water glass and turned, only to hear a soft voice behind him. "Sir, you dropped something." Not anger, not resentment, not even disappointment. Just a gentle, steady tone that made him pause. And that pause would become the first thread in the unraveling of his carefully built world. Her name was Mara Ellington, 27 years old, eyes tired but kind, with lines that shouldn't belong on someone so young. She worked the evening shift, then the night shift at a care home, and still found time to pack her younger brother's lunch every morning before high school. She had learned to sleep in fragments. 20 minutes on the bus, 7 minutes leaning against a wall, a full hour if life blessed her on weekends. And yet every step she took carried an unspoken grace. Her black apron still smelled faintly of dish soap from where she'd hurriedly wiped off a stain. Her hair was pulled back with a simple elastic, a few strands falling like reminders of the chaos she'd survived today. But it was her eyes that people remembered, warm, resilient, and quietly observant. The kind of eyes that suggested she knew suffering well, but refused to let it ruin her softness. Elias Harwood had everything: private jets, penthouses overlooking cities he barely remembered, staff trained to keep their voices low when he passed. But what he lacked was trust. He had been betrayed too many times, by business partners, by so-called friends, even by family members waiting for his health to falter. He learned to test people without mercy. A dropped wallet, a fake emergency call, a suspicious email left open on his laptop. And yes, small tips for attentive waitstaff. What he found mostly were hungry hands and resentful eyes. So when Mara followed him with the $5 tip, he assumed he already knew how this story would end. "You forgot this?" she said again, holding the $5 bill lightly between her fingers. No accusation, only sincerity. Elias blinked. "It's yours." Her gaze softened. "I know, but you left it under a glass like it was something embarrassing." The words landed harder than a shout, because he had done exactly that. He expected her to pocket it quickly. He expected her to say something like, "Really? Only 5? Instead, she placed the money back on the table and said quietly, "Someone else needs this more than I do. Leave it for the next person who comes in cold tonight." A pause fell between them, thick, unexpected, almost intimate. There were no customers left, no audience, no performance, just truth. Mara had learned generosity the hard way. She lost her mother at 23, lost her father 6 months later when his grief became too heavy to carry. Left with her 14-year-old brother Caleb, she spent nights awake calculating bills she couldn't pay and mornings pretending she'd slept fine. She worked double shifts, waited tables, cleaned floors, endured managers who snapped at her. But she never broke because Caleb needed stability, someone to cheer at his track meets, someone to leave notes in his lunchbox reminding him he wasn't alone. She donated worn blankets to the shelter each winter because she remembered sleeping in her car during a November cold snap when rent ran 3 weeks late. She volunteered at the care home because the elderly residents reminded her of her father, quiet, bruised by life, hungry for someone to look them in the eye. Pain had shaped her, but not into bitterness, into empathy. And empathy, silently lived, radiated from her every gesture. Elias grew up in a house with marble floors, but emotionally barren hallways. His mother loved fashion more than motherhood. His father loved business more than being present. As a young adult, he built his empire out of fear of losing control, fear of repeating his parents' mistakes, fear of vulnerability. So he tested people. Constantly, it wasn't cruelty, it was armor. But armor grows heavy when worn too long. What do you mean someone else needs it more? Elias asked. Mara shrugged lightly. $5 can be a meal, or a bus ride home, or a warm drink for someone who had a worse night than me. He studied her. The tired posture, the faint tremor in her fingers, the quiet steadiness in her voice. You think you don't need it, he said. She smiled softly. I need many things. But what I am not is desperate. A simple sentence. A powerful truth. Elias had spent years believing everyone wanted something from him. Yet here she was, kind, tired, struggling, giving away what little she had. The injustice of her life pressed against him like a weight. He tried another test, almost reflexively. I can pay you more, he said. 100, 200, for your kindness. Her expression tightened. Please don't turn it into a transaction. He froze. She continued softly. Keenness loses its meaning when you start attaching price tags. He had never met someone who rejected money so effortlessly, or someone who seemed to see through him so clearly. You remind me of my father, she said quietly. Elias stiffened. Your father? He used to say, character is proven when no one is watching. Her eyes didn't waver. And right now no one is watching. Except they were, because Elias felt as though he were being observed not by people, but by the truth itself. When he didn't respond, she added gently, Sir, if you're testing people, I hope one day you meet someone you trust enough not to. He stopped breathing. That was it, the sentence. The one that landed not on his ears, but on the fractures inside his chest. If you're testing people, I hope one day you meet someone you trust enough not to. It wasn't a reprimand, wasn't an accusation. It was a prayer, a hope, a blessing wrapped in truth. And it hit deeper than any insult ever could. 2 lines she spoke that night would follow him for years. Kindness loses its meaning when you attach a price tag. And if you're testing people, I hope you meet someone you trust enough not to. These were not lines practiced or polished, they were lived. Elias took a breath. Do you know who I am? Her smile remained calm. Someone who needed that table tonight, and someone who looks tired. She didn't mention wealth, didn't mention status. She saw the human, not the billionaire. For the first time in years, Elias felt small, and somehow safe. He sat back down slowly. What's your name? He asked. Mara. Mara. She hesitated. Dreams cost time I don't have. Tell me anyway. Her voice grew quiet. I want my brother to finish school without worrying about money. I want to sleep more than 4 hours at night. I want to visit the ocean again, just once. She looked embarrassed. Small dreams. Elias shook his head. They're the only dreams that matter. But she didn't know he meant it with aching sincerity. He pushed the $5 bill between them again. Take it. She sighed, but took it gently. Then she folded it carefully, placed it inside the donation jar at the counter, and said, Now it belongs to someone who needs it more. And then she walked away, simple, quiet, certain. He watched her in stunned silence. Her hands moved as though gathering hope, not plates. Her posture, exhausted yet unwavering, told a story no tip could measure. And in that instant, Elias Harwood realized he had been testing the wrong people all his life. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat by the window of his penthouse, staring at the glittering city beneath him, thinking about Mara's words. By sunrise, he called his attorney. I want to change my will. The lawyer sounded startled. To what extent? Elias whispered. Completely. He directed millions not to his distant relatives, not to corporate foundations, but to real people. Single mothers, underpaid caregivers, students drowning in debt, and at the top of the trust he established. Mara Ellington and her brother, Caleb. College funds. A home. A monthly living stipend. A charitable foundation in her father's name. All because a woman with nothing gave away the little she had. When he returned to the restaurant a week later, Mara looked surprised. You came back. I had to, he said softly. Why? He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter written in his uneven handwritings. You taught me more in 5 minutes than money taught me in 50 years. You saw a man where others saw a wallet. You reminded me that trust is the only true measure of character. Mara read it slowly, her hands trembling. When she looked up, tears rimmed her eyes. Why me? She whispered. Elias smiled. Because you gave away $5 like it was faith. Before leaving, he added one final line that stayed with her forever. Wealth reveals who we are, but kindness reveals who we could be. Mara never forgot that. Months later, news quietly spread about the anonymous benefactor who funded local shelters, care homes, and scholarships. Mara never took credit, neither did Elias, but the actions spoke for themselves. And when Mara finally left her waitress job, the staff gathered, forming a silent semicircle around her. Hands over their hearts, not because she was rich now, but because she had always been the kindest among them, the one who gave even when she had nothing. Stories like this remind us that the world is shaped not by the wealthiest people, but by the kindest. Silent generosity, unseen battles, unspoken wounds. If this story touched you, tell me where you're watching from, and if you want more stories that honor quiet heroes, please subscribe. Because somewhere tonight, someone like Mara is giving away her last $5 and rewriting someone's world without even knowing it.